Good morning and welcome. Good morning and welcome to the service of worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. We are so glad that you are here. My name is Helen O'Brien, and I will be your worship associate this morning. Our settled minister, Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, is away on sabbatical this summer. She will return to the pulpit on Sunday, September the 3rd. We are as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert. Whoever you are, whoever you have been, and whoever you are becoming, I invite you to bring your whole self here now. Our speaker this morning is one of our own, Randy Springer. His academic background is in philosophy and religious studies, but he spent most of his working career as a computer programmer. He has been here at UUCT since 1994, and before that he attended a UU congregation in California. His motivations for speaking include giving something back to the church, giving other people something to think about, and the benefits he receives from the challenge of putting thoughts into words. We also have a very special welcome for Danielle Mifam, our new long-term pianist. Danielle is an almost PhD in music education. She has degrees in piano performance and is currently studying organ and jazz piano at the University of Arizona. Danielle is from Canada, specifically Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and has been in Tucson since 2021. Let's give a very warm welcome to Randy and Danielle. Okay, I have a number of announcements. Because of the progress our country has made in fighting the coronavirus, we do not require that masks be worn in worship or in concurrent religious education. You are, of course, welcome to wear a mask, but it is no longer required. If you are feeling sick, we encourage you to wear a mask or join us from home. Based on our last poll, UUCT members are committed to being fully vaccinated and boosted. For all our sakes, especially those most vulnerable, please let's maintain that commitment. I extend a special welcome to visitors and invite you to fill out a guest information card at the end of the service. There are clipboards with yellow paper that you can fill out at the end of the service here in Goddard. We will meet for social hour here after the service. There will be coffee, iced tea, lemonade, snacks, and of course, good company. When our service ends, we appreciate those of you who are able to help us set up more chairs around the tables in the back of the room. And I've got an announcement that is the report from the Holland project team. Work on the project will begin July 10. Yay! The first steps are to correct a construction fence on the front south side of Holland to the first parking island, then east to the roadway, and then north to the Memorial Garden fence. This area will be the staging ground and hold the roll-off for the demolition materials. All copper, metals, and PVC pipe will be recycled. The demolition of the old HVAC system will take 2 to 3 weeks, and then there will be a pause before other subcontractors will be mobilized. Durazo Construction Company asks that no one enter the construction zone without being escorted by a site foreman, and definitely not when the workmen are on site. We will arrange a tour of the work when there is something to show. This will be a hard hat, steel-toe shoes, and protective glasses area. At last, we are underway. Yay! The goal is to hold Easter services in Holland. Yes, that is a long way off. We are living the supply chain problems you read and hear about. And that's from the Holland project team. Finally, I wanted to just comment that if there are restrooms down this hall and then down the hallway to the left. And now we have our prelude.
not up there, I am not on the schedule, but I'm going to speak anyway. I am Jody Bergedick, and I am the president of your board of trustees. And this is the very last Sunday I get to say that. My term is ending on the board on the 1st of July. And there's also 3 other people whose term is over. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about them, and then I want the biggest shout out in the world for these people. Okay? So, Deanna Bland is leaving the board, and this is a secret, but every year, the Board of Trustees had to do what we affectionately called the REV report. And that meant that we had to do this big long thing all about all the things that Reverend Bethany had done that year. And it is a god-awful, hard thing to do. And every single year, Deanna stepped up and did it. And spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours synthesizing all this information and making it into a really great report. And obviously, she did well because Reverend Bethany did get her full fellowship. So, good for Deanna. Sam Meyer's also leaving. She's secretary. I don't need to say anything else. That's a very difficult job. And Mike Greenbaum is also leaving. His portfolio was worship, so he had to wrangle all these guys and help make worship as wonderful as it is. So I figured it out, and with them combined, they had served about 25 years. Seems like hundreds, but not really. So I just want to send a shout out to them. Mike, if you're there, hi, wherever anybody is. Thank you. And also thank you for me. It's been, I'm gonna cry, but I won't, I'll try. It's been an amazing pleasure to serve this church. And if you haven't yet, I suggest you do, because it sounds hard, and that's the joke, it's not. It's fun, it's lovely, and there's such a sense of purpose and such a sense of teamwork that it's just something you all should do. So let's hear it for Deanna, Sam, and Mike. Raise the roof. So, thank you all.
And Jody.
We begin with thoughts and feelings, limitless in their possibilities. To communicate them to others, we translate these thoughts and feelings into words. This forces us to select from among the mere 20,000 or so words that our vocabulary is likely to have. On Sunday mornings, we assemble to share our words with one another. They are always imprecise and incomplete, but our hearts and minds are made stronger by our having been together. In this hour, let us celebrate our shared values.
Please join me in these words of chalice lighting by the Reverend Leslie Takahashi. There we go. All that we have ever loved and all that we have ever been stands with us on the brink of all that we desire to create. A deeper peace, a larger love, a more embracing hope, a deeper joy in this life we share. And if you have a chalice at home, please light it as we light our chalice here.
And now please rise in body or spirit and join in singing Gather the Spirit, hymn number 347.
Sweet for the soul we know.
Our earth is strong. It can hold our pain and our joy, our love and our anger. Our shared bowls, which we use for joys and sorrows each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings, and also the smaller stones that will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. We mourn the sudden death of Alma Bird, a member of our congregation who died suddenly this past weekend. Let us remember the desert people who first came in this place. We honor the Atam, the Yavapai, the Yaqui, the Hohokam, and the other peoples who no longer exist as tribal entities here in Arizona. We live in the desert. Know that water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. Let's remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. We pour water from a plastic jug, similar to the ones used by those seeking to provide greater access to water in the desert, like our ministry partner, No More Deaths. If you have a joy or sorrow to share aloud, I invite you to go to menti.com and put in the code 19743942. If you are here in person, I invite you to come up to our table and create ripples of hope by putting a stone into the water to symbolize your joy or sorrow. We ask you to form an aisle, line down the middle aisle, and to return your seat on the outside aisles. other words we have that people typed in this morning? Yesterday was the 12th anniversary of the death of my only nephew, Brett. Love you and miss you, buddy. Saddened by the sudden death of a beloved church member, Alma Bird, such a sweet lady. We celebrate our love, faith, and kindness towards life and each other. Sorrow, my company chose to close operations in Arizona this week, making me and over 100 coworkers unemployed. Joy, I get to start over. Joy for the love of gathering weekly with all of you. Whoop. Can we bring those back? Yeah. Joy and gratitude for the teachers in my life. Yes, thank you. Just not quite. Celebrating a couple of birthdays. Happy day. We express our sorrow towards our divisiveness and towards all who live. I'm not getting the last words. Okay.
I will extend my thanks and welcome a bit later, but I'll begin here with an observation about the order of service. Typically, it contains separate sections for story and reading. Today, a couple of brief readings and multiple stories are contained within the sermon. In the movie, The Princess Bride, the villainous Vizzini, that's the guy in the middle, repeatedly finds his hopes and expectations thwarted. Each time he encounters disappointment, he shouts, "Inconceivable!" When he exclaims "inconceivable" for the 5th time, the hero, Inigo Montoya, the guy on the left, comments, "You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means." End of reading. The connotations of a word, positive, negative, or neutral, can change over time. The term baby boomer was first defined as a U.S. citizen born between 1946 and 1964. Today, it is usually abbreviated to boomer and coming to mean out of touch old person. Full disclosure, by about a month or so, I am too old to be classified as a boomer, baby, or otherwise, so I appear to be doubly obsolete. But a word's connotation can also improve over time. The word Unitarian was first used by Trinitarian Christians to insult liberal Christians. Then the word was taken up by the liberals. In 1825, the American Unitarian Association was formed. When words are misunderstood, the results can be unexpected. After moving to a part of the country which she had not previously seen, a woman previously encountered a phrase she had never heard. When something was expensive, the locals said that it cost a nominal egg. This struck the woman as odd, but wanting to fit in, she adopted the phrase herself. Some things cost a nominal egg. Months later, the embarrassing truth occurred to her. She was in New England, where people typically drop the sound of the letter R when it follows a vowel. The residents were saying of an expensive item that it cost an arm and a leg. Or as most of us would say, an arm and a leg. The singer, Willie Nelson, said, "Music seems to be the common denomination that brings us all together." Of course, he meant denominator, not denomination. Other misuses have become common. People say or write tenant when they mean tenet, risky when they mean risque, would of or could of, instead of would have or could have. With increasing frequency, I am hearing, I wish I would have, instead of the grammatically correct, I wish I had. No doubt you could furnish examples of misuses that you encounter. Here's one that may surprise you. The musical Oklahoma was set in 1906 and first produced in 1943. In one scene, cowboy Will Parker serenades Annie, the young woman he loves. Will tells Annie what a great couple he thinks they make. She is interested but cautious and asks him what his reaction would be if their family unit should expand from 2 to 3. Will exclaims, "He better look a lot like me," to which Annie replies, "The spit and image." She did not say the spitting image. She said the spit and image. That was the original expression. It meant a thing that closely resembles something else. Spitting image is now standard English. It even became the name of a television show in both England and in the United States, but it is a misrepresentation of the original expression. Does the original meaning of a word matter? That's a tricky question. On the one hand, we call out words that were first used as racial or ethnic slurs. On the other hand, you have likely used the words vandalize and vandalism. They are derived from the group of people known as the Vandals, who occupied various parts of Europe and northern Africa between the 2nd and 5th centuries. So, is the word vandalism an ethnic slur? Realistically, no one can know the complete history of their own language or have all their knowledge directly in mind each time they speak. And the etymology of a word may be unrelated to its current usage. As Ludwig Wittgenstein, the premier philosopher of language, said, "The meaning of a word is its usage in ordinary language." There is a rule of linguistic etiquette that when you understand what another person is saying, it is improper to correct them even if they are misusing a word or an expression. I understand that this is usually true, but it comes at a price. Every use of language is a vote as to how it should be used. And when an error in language is repeated often enough, it becomes standard usage. This troubles the philosopher in me because it is uncomfortably close to saying that when a falsehood is repeated often enough, it becomes the truth. Speaking of philosophers, Heraclitus from ancient Greece is best known for this statement: "You cannot step into the same river twice." Since a river, by its very nature, is always changing, when you step into the river the second time, it's no longer the same river. Using the same logic, I give you this statement to take with you. You cannot speak the same sentence twice. Language, like the river, is always changing. So the second time you speak any sentence, it is no longer the same sentence. Meanings, like fashion, are always in flux. Language is, like rivers, fluid. Spoiler alert, I just used a metaphor. You'll hear more about them later.
Our reading meditation this morning is from Carol Thomas Sissel. Words matter. Diverse, multicultural, inclusive, welcoming. If I made a list of every single Unitarian Universalist congregation I have served, visited, or worshiped at, they would have a few things in common, including the use of these words. Perhaps on the front of the order of service, or scrolling across the home page of their website. Maybe they've been emblazoned on a rainbow-colored banner hanging in the sanctuary. Wherever they are, more often than not, the words are proudly combined with another expression that has been embraced in everyday UU vernacular. All are welcome here. The congregations, churches, and fellowships on my list all have one or more of these words proudly on display. I know why they are used so freely. Initially, I feel embraced by them. There's a warmth of recognition when my eyes first capture their sight. A sense of being acknowledged and valued moves from heart to head, and then a smile settles on my lips. My heart blooms. I feel like the welcome table has been set for me, and I'm eager to pull up a chair. All of this takes place in an immeasurable instant. In the next moment, it is tempered. I remember past experiences and unconsciously recalculate and measure my response. The petals of my heart close a bit, protecting the delicate stigma and stamen that lie within. Fear of disappointment rises within me like a sun. I love those words. I want what they promise, but I have been repeatedly disappointed. It is simply not enough to print them on an order of service or in a newsletter. They must have meaning and intention at their core. A desire for multicultural worship is wonderful, but it will not flower if that seed of yearning is not nurtured by commitment and a plan. Longing for diversity of race, gender, or age is only a beginning. It calls for caring and creative programming. Our congregations are primarily white, female, and over 60. If we are to serve into the future, then that must change. I believe that we can transform first ourselves and then the world. I am injured repeatedly when we do not. When we use words just for the sake of using them, I am hurt. Without true resolve, planning, and measurable goals behind the things I see, my trust and hope are broken anew. Why does it hurt? Every time I see those words, I feel the possible revival of Unitarian Universalism germinating in the warm soil of spirit. I've seen the transformation begin to take place in Washington State, Washington, D.C., and California. Congregations in Oklahoma continue to push our faith forward. So yes, I am hopeful but wary. On too many occasions and in too many places, these words and ideals which they carry are given lip service. Words matter. They lift and hold us. They illuminate the future and shower us with possibilities. When misused, they hurt. Verbal cuts and abrasions sting. Language leaves wounds that become scars. Words matter. If you and your congregation are not ready to meet the promises you craft and then share with the world, stop publishing them. Please don't invite me to sit at your table unless you have a warm, satisfying meal to serve. It doesn't have to be a gourmet feast. A potluck is fine. The souffle may have only risen halfway. The cookies might be burned on the edges. The pasta can be overcooked. That's okay. I'm starving. What it must be is fulfilling, real, made with love, and ready to be eaten. Remember, I believe what you say and write. Words matter.
Thank you. Had I gone to accounting instead of computer programming, which was a real possibility, I could now say, old accountants never die, they just lose their balance. From Lewis Carroll's book, Through the Looking Glass. When I use a word, Humpty Dumpty said in a rather scornful tone, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is, said Alice, whether you can make words mean so many different things. The question is, said Humpty Dumpty, which is to be master? That's all. End of reading. I could have spoken today about the censorship in which conservatives are currently engaging, the banning of books, restricting the curriculum in schools, and rewriting history books to trivialize slavery or the treatment of indigenous Americans. But it is not usually my style to preach to the choir. I prefer to give you something to think about. By the way, preaching to the choir is another metaphor, more later. A few comments about our moral vocabulary. Changes in language sometimes reflect not merely differences in usage, but emerging outlooks on substantive issues. Two examples are forgiveness and guilt. Forgiveness traditionally implied a reconciliation between two parties. One person injures another, the first person apologizes, the second person forgives, their relationship is restored. This was even the classical view of personal salvation. In the words of the Christmas chorus, Christmas carol, God and sinners reconciled. Today, the act of forgiving is more often construed as the inner psychological process of letting go, irrespective of anything having to do with another person. People speak of forgiving those who have died, and even forgiving oneself. The person who said, "Forgiveness is giving up hope of a better past," has little in common with the preachers and moralists of the past for whom forgiveness implied reconciliation. Likewise, guilt. The word guilt has been retained as a legal concept, but outside a court of law, it has come to be associated with one's emotional life. Guilt feelings are sometimes treated as one treats a headache, something to be removed if possible. More recently still, guilt is being used as a verb, as in, my parents are trying to guilt me for not visiting them more often. That sentence could not have been spoken 50 years ago. When I first began attending a Unitarian Universalist congregation in California in 1986, I was surprised to learn that some of the words from traditional religious language met with great disfavor. Leading examples were God, worship, and prayer. Other words such as holy, divine, and sacred were not so much prohibited as ignored. During my 28 years here at UUCT, I've seen some of this persist, but I've also witnessed changes in our language. Back in the 90s, I joined the Sunday Services Committee and frequently served as pulpit host. Today, that group is called the Worship Committee. Its members serve as worship associates, and we routinely refer to the worship service and worship leaders. Currently, we have a segment in the service that can be labeled prayer or meditation. Sometimes we list reflection or contemplation as alternate possibilities. Which word people use can reflect real differences in personal belief, but sometimes the words seem almost synonymous. The example that most puzzles me is our continued resistance to the word God. If we can define worship on our own broad terms as a consideration of things worthy, I am at a loss as to why we cannot define God on those same terms as whatever you consider the highest reality and/or your highest value. What has been the biggest change in our vocabulary? Surprisingly, the words spiritual and spirituality. In my earliest days here, those words were sometimes met with suspicion. In 1996, I gave a sermon here titled Rationality and Spirituality. My objective was to give credence to a concept to which many secularists were then resistant. But now we use the words spiritual and spirituality freely. Today, it's almost a cliche for a liberal person to say, I'm spiritual, but not religious. Frankly, I am not happy with that statement. For one thing, it ignores the rapidly changing meanings of those words themselves. In fact, not that long ago, writers used the word religious in almost exactly the same way that many people today use the word spiritual. Secondly, the statement, "I'm spiritual but not religious," ignores the fact that non-Western religions have never been religious in the Western sense of adherence to doctrines. Thirdly, the statement reflects individual experience with no sense of obligation to a larger community. After all, those secularists in the 90s who were committed to their church community but disdained traditional beliefs could almost have been described as religious but not spiritual. A unique problem arises when we are examining the texts of the world's religions. It is customary to say that Buddhism begins by saying that all of life involves suffering. But what if that Sanskrit word, dukkha, had been translated as discontent, or stress, or unsatisfactoriness, or unease? Possible alternatives produce a rather different understanding. From the Christian scriptures, there is a Greek word that is customarily translated as faith. But some scholars today suggest that a better sense of its meaning would come from the word trust. That change alone would have altered the course of theological writings throughout the history of Christianity. After all, nowhere do the Christian texts speak of blind faith, or a leap of faith, or of the relationship of faith to reason.
We have been warmed by fires we did not build. We have drunk at wells we did not dig. In acknowledgement of our many blessings and many needs, we join in making a commitment to our church. An offering will now be collected to support the life and work of our congregation. If you're joining on live stream, you can send a check to the office, give online at uuctucson.org/donate, or text 833-361-5796. If you are here in person, the ushers will come around now with offering baskets to collect your donations. Thank you.
Years ago, one summer, we had a guest speaker who was speaking from the podium, forgot she was speaking from the podium, and took off and tumbled and injured herself. And I was no doubt the only person in the room perverse enough to notice that the closing hymn was One More Step. I wish to thank the worship committee for inviting me to speak, and especially Helen and everyone else who played a part in putting this service together. Thanks to you all for coming. And by the way, a great shout out to the AV people who made the transition from there to here as seamless as it could possibly have been. They deserve all our thanks and recognition. And a special welcome to Danielle. We look forward to hearing what you can do with the bigger and better piano in the other room, but for now, this does just fine. Historically, governments have treated composers of music more favorably than they have those who have written on religion or politics. For example, during the first century of Protestantism in England, Catholic theologians and priests were not tolerated. But composers Thomas Tallis and William Byrd, both Catholics, flourished. And those folks who came over on the Mayflower, though they were Protestant, they were escaping the version of Protestantism that had been established by Henry VIII. However, today the words sung in vocal music sometimes come under more, not less, scrutiny. Unitarian Universalists have their own specific difficulties with the lyrics of our hymns. I once gave a whole sermon based on the decades-old joke that most of you have heard. Why are Unitarian Universalists so bad at singing hymns? Because they're always reading ahead to see if they agree with the words. And so, sometimes we engage in word substitution in our hymns. God is replaced by source or love. In Amazing Grace, wretch is replaced by soul. Lord is replaced by whatever. As if we didn't have enough problems with words, another type of controversy has emerged more recently. In our Teal hymnal, published in 2005, there is a song, Standing on the Side of Love. At our General Assembly in Phoenix in 2012, this song and its title became a demonstration of support for everyone who belongs to a group that is often marginalized. But the story does not end there. Some people who are wheelchair bound criticized the author, who wrote both the lyrics and the music because of his use of the word standing. He conceded their point and voluntarily changed the words to answering the call of love. His critics were satisfied, and some ministers have openly supported his change. I respect the rights of composers to change their own words. In this case, however, the composer, his supporters, and even others who said he had gone too far seem not to have noticed other phrases in this song that raise the same issue. 1, fulfilling the vision divine. Does this discriminate against blind people? 2, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear. Does that discriminate against those who are deaf? 3, hands joined together. One reason I am alerted to that phrase is that I have a cousin who was born without the full set of hands and fingers that most of us have. Those who have experienced the amputation of an arm could make the same point. Surely, if standing on the side of love is objectionable, so are all 3 of the phrases that I have cited. Our hymnals contain instances of these metaphors too numerous to count. When it became clear to me that one metaphor was being attacked while several others were ignored, it struck me as so blatantly inconsistent, I wanted to shout, "Inconceivable!" Yes, it is good to call attention to actual instances of ableism discrimination against persons with disabilities. But human language is inescapably metaphorical. And when a metaphor is taken literally, weird things happen. The lyrics of vocal music are especially vulnerable. After all, musical lyrics are almost always based on poetry, and poetry makes use of metaphor even more frequently than does prose. The writing of poetry, a highly creative activity, requires a vivid imagination and the use of free association. It needs freedom, not restrictions. The term poetic license stems from the realization that poets need even more leeway than do other writers. Just as I am stumped as to why God is more problematic than worship, I am stumped as to why I should experience less freedom as a songwriter than I do as a speaker. However, controversies about musical lyrics are hardly unique to Unitarian Universalists. Composer Daniel Bernard Roumain wrote a piece that was intended for a concert in 2021 that commemorated the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa, Oklahoma race riots, in which the black community was decimated by a white mob. Roumain's lyrics included the phrase, "God bless America, God damn America." The soloist, who incidentally is black, refused to sing the phrase. The composer was asked to change or omit the word. He refused. He was fired. Sometimes everything does hang on a single word. I have never accepted changes to lyrics. As someone who has written vocal compositions, I don't want anyone changing my words without my permission. I therefore pay the same respect to others. You don't have to agree with the lyrics to acknowledge them. And when we process an author's original words, we often learn something in doing so. Also, there is such a thing as fidelity to the historical record. Just as conservatives falsify history when they gloss over atrocities from the past, liberals also falsify history when they change words to suit contemporary beliefs and tastes. The human voice in song is a beautiful musical instrument. In particular, 4-part vocal harmony produces a sound that is not duplicated elsewhere. The spirit of vocal music can thrive only when composers are given at least as much freedom as is given to other writers. After all, as Willie Nelson reminded us, we are brought together by music, our common denomination. I forgot. Yeah. Now for the closing hymn, you'll have your choice in the spirit of liberal religion. You can sing Standing on the Side of Love or Answering the Call of Love. Your choice.
So please stand either physically or metaphorically and sing with us, Standing on the Side of Love, or Answering the Call of Love.
odd that I have better balance on my bicycle than I do taking steps. God has a weird sense of humor. Two brief sets of closing words, very different in tone. Words attributed to the recently deceased Tina Turner. This is what I want in heaven. Words to become notes and conversations to be symphonies. Amen, sister, amen. My mother is 97. When she was about 90, in a phone call with me, she said, in passing, she was in bed with an Afghan. In a silly mood, I asked her how she handled the language difference. Without hesitating, she said, sometimes words are not necessary.
Please join me in these words of chalice extinguishing, written by the Reverend Maureen Kaloran. So we're going to read different parts. I'm the worship associate, so I'll read those pieces. The congregation, that's you guys, but congregation left is over there, congregation right is over here, and then when it says all, we'll all read together. And if you read in the wrong time, it doesn't matter. This is the message of our faith.
To act with passion in the face of injustice, to love with courage in the midst of life's pain.
This is the meaning of our chalice flame. May it empower our hearts until we are together again.
says the other one says you're